Have you ever found yourself endlessly striving, planning, and pushing forward, only to feel like you're running in circles? Like no matter how much effort you put in, things just don't fall into place the way you expected? You pray for answers, you map out your future, you do everything in your power to make things work, yet you still feel stuck, frustrated, maybe even abandoned. And in those moments, you start to wonder, God, are you even listening? Do you see what I'm going through? Why does it feel like nothing is working out the way I planned? But here's the real question. What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because God has forgotten you, but because you're still trying to write your own story? What if, in your attempt to control every detail, you're actually resisting the very plan that God has already set in motion for your life? The truth is, we all do this. We all have moments where we think we know best, where we try to take the pen out of God's hands and rewrite the script to fit our own desires, our own timing, our own understanding. And when things don't go the way we expect, we panic. We force solutions. We hold on to things that were never meant for us. And in doing so, we not only delay God's blessings, but we also rob ourselves of the peace and purpose that comes with full surrender. Think about this for a moment. What if the delays, the disappointments, and the detours aren't signs that God has abandoned you, but rather proof that He's redirecting you? What if the very things you're fighting so hard to hold on to are the very things God is asking you to release, so He can give you something greater? Maybe that closed door was His protection. Maybe that unexpected change was His way of leading you towards something better. And maybe, just maybe, the breakthrough you've been praying for is waiting on the other side of your surrender. Today, we're going to talk about what it truly means to let go and let God. We'll uncover why we struggle to trust Him, how we can recognize when we're trying to take control, and what happens when we finally step back and allow Him to take the lead. Because here's the truth, God's plan for your life is far greater than anything you could ever script for yourself. And the moment you stop rewriting His story and start trusting His process is the moment you'll experience His peace, His purpose, and His promises in ways you never imagined. We all have dreams. We all have a vision of what our lives should look like, the perfect job, the ideal relationship, the smoothest path to success. And we work hard, we make plans, we set deadlines. But what happens when things don't go the way we imagined? What happens when life throws unexpected detours, delays, and disappointments our way? We panic. We try to fix things. We force outcomes. And sometimes, we even begin to doubt God. I know this feeling all too well. I've been there. Holding on so tightly to my own plans, convinced that I knew what was best for my life. I thought if I just worked a little harder, prayed a little more, pushed a little further, then everything would finally come together the way I wanted. But God had a different plan. And let me tell you, His way was so much better than mine. Looking back, I now see how He was protecting me from things I couldn't see, redirecting me towards something greater than I could have ever imagined. And I'm not the only one who has struggled with this. The Bible is full of stories of people who tried to take control, who thought they knew better than God, only to find themselves exhausted, frustrated, and in need of divine intervention. One of the most powerful examples? Abraham and Sarah. Their story shows us exactly what happens when we try to rewrite God's plan, and what happens when we finally surrender and trust Him. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. Have you ever found yourself struggling to trust God when things aren't going the way you planned? You pray, you wait, but nothing seems to happen. So you take matters into your own hands, convinced that maybe, just maybe, you need to help God move things along. But here's the truth. God's plan is already set in place. He sees the full picture, while we only see a small piece. And when we try to control what was never meant to be in our hands, we end up exhausted, anxious, and further from the peace we so desperately need. The Bible gives us clear guidance on this in Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. This verse isn't just a suggestion, it's a call to surrender. God is saying, stop relying on what you see. Stop trying to figure it all out on your own. Trust me, and I will lead you exactly where you need to be. But as humans, we struggle with this. We want control. And if we don't see immediate results, we assume God isn't working. But the truth is, He is always working, just not always in the way we expect. And we're not alone in this struggle. Even some of the greatest figures in the Bible had moments where they tried to take control of their own story, only to realize that God's plan was far greater than they could have ever imagined. Let's talk about Abraham and Sarah. God made them a promise, a life-changing, destiny-defining promise. He told Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, and that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars. Genesis 15 verse 5. But there was a problem. Sarah was barren, and years passed without a child. Can you imagine how hard that must have been? Waiting, wondering, questioning if they had misunderstood God. And eventually, that waiting turned into doubt. Sarah took matters into her own hands. Instead of trusting God's perfect timing, she decided to rewrite the plan. She told Abraham to have a child with Hagar, her servant, Genesis 16. At first, this might have seemed like a solution, but in reality, it only brought pain, division, and consequences that would last for generations. The child born from that decision, Ishmael, became a source of conflict, and Sarah's doubt led to unnecessary struggles. But here's the most powerful part of the story. God's plan was never failing. Despite their mistake, He remained faithful. Years later, in His perfect timing, Sarah miraculously gave birth to Isaac, the promised child, Genesis 21. God didn't need Sarah's intervention. He didn't need her to fix His timeline. What He needed was for her to trust that He would do what He said He would do. And the same is true for us today. When we try to take control, we often end up creating problems that could have been avoided if we had just trusted God from the start. But the good news? Even when we mess up, even when we try to rewrite the plan, God's faithfulness remains. His promises still stand. Now you might be thinking, that's a great story, but what does it have to do with me? Well, the truth is, we do the exact same thing. We may not be trying to have a child through a servant like Sarah did, but we try to take control in different ways. Think about it. How often do we force relationships that God is clearly closing the door on? How often do we make impulsive decisions without praying first because we're afraid of waiting? How often do we hold on to fear instead of trusting God's promises? If we truly want to let go and let God, we need to take real steps towards surrendering control. Here's how. 1. Recognize what you're holding on to. Ask yourself, is there something in my life that I'm refusing to trust God with? Maybe it's a job, a relationship, or a dream that hasn't come to pass yet. Acknowledge it. Bring it before God. 2. Surrender through prayer. Philippians 4 verse 6 reminds us, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. When we pray, we release our burdens. Instead of carrying the weight ourselves, we place it in God's hands, knowing that He is in control. 3. Trust God's timing. Waiting is not punishment, it's preparation. Just like Sarah and Abraham had to wait for Isaac, we must learn to wait for God's best. His timing is never late, and when the blessing comes, it will be right on time. 4. Replace fear with faith. Isaiah 41 verse 10 says, do not fear, for I am with you. When we let go of control, fear tries to creep in. But God is reminding us that He is always with us. You are not alone in this journey. He is guiding you, protecting you, and preparing you for something greater. So what are you still holding on to? What area of your life do you need to surrender today? Because the truth is, the moment you stop rewriting God's plan and start trusting His process, is the moment you'll experience the peace, purpose, and blessings He has in store for you. I know letting go is hard. It's one of the hardest things we can do, because surrender feels like losing control. It feels like stepping into the unknown. And if we're honest, most of us don't like uncertainty. We want answers now. We want to see the full picture before we take the next step. But here's the truth: letting go isn't giving up. It's not about quitting. It's about trusting. Trusting that the same God who created the heavens and the earth, the same God who formed you in your mother's womb, the same God who has carried you this far, will not fail you now. Think about it. What if what you're holding onto so tightly is the very thing keeping you from receiving God's best? What if the job you're afraid to leave is holding you back from the career God has for you? What if the relationship you refuse to walk away from is standing in the way of the one God has prepared for you? What if the plan you keep trying to force is keeping you from stepping into something greater? God is not asking you to abandon your dreams. He's asking you to trust Him with them. He's asking you to stop striving and start surrendering. Because the moment you let go is the moment He steps in. And when God steps in, things shift. Doors open. Peace replaces anxiety. Strength replaces fear. His will becomes clear. I know how difficult it is to release control. I know how scary it can be to step into the unknown. But let me remind you, God is already there. He goes before you. He is not surprised by your circumstances. He is not caught off guard by your struggles. And He has not forgotten about you. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. Even in the waiting, even in the silence, even when it feels like nothing is happening, God is working. He is shaping you. He is preparing you. He is writing your story beautifully. But you have to stop trying to take the pen out of His hands. So, I want you to take a deep breath. Right now. In this moment. Whatever it is you've been holding on to, whatever has been keeping you up at night, whatever fear has been weighing heavy on your heart, I want you to release it. Say this with me: God, I trust You. I let go of my plan, and I surrender to Yours. I choose to believe that Your way is better, Your timing is perfect, and Your promises never fail. I will not fear, because You are with me. Let go and let God. He's got you. Now, I want to hear from you. What's one thing you'll trust God with today? Maybe it's a relationship, a decision, a dream you've been holding on to. Whatever it is, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to pray for you and stand in faith with you. And if this message blessed you today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. You never know how God might use your simple act of sharing to encourage someone else in their journey. Also, if you want more faith-filled encouragement like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're building a community of believers who are learning to trust God fully, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. Before you go, let me remind you of this: God's plan is always greater than ours. His ways are higher. His timing is perfect. And when we truly let go and let God, we stop striving and start walking in peace, purpose, and the blessings He has already prepared for us. So, no more rewriting the story. No more forcing doors that were never meant to open. Trust that what God has written for your life is far greater than anything you could ever imagine. Stay encouraged, stay faithful, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.